Hey guys, it's been a while since I did a video. I've been working on a series where I'm sketching Deadpool until the new Deadpool movie comes out. So you can check that out here on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I'm just doing shorts. They're all about a minute long. Anyway, to continue this series that we've been working on, as promised, this video will be about shading. I'm going to show you 4 different shading techniques that I use. Of course, it's up to you whether you choose to copy me or do your own thing. The whole point in this is to discover what style works best for you, teach yourself how to draw. I never learnt any proper shading techniques. The 4 methods I'm going to show you today are pretty widely used in the sketching community. However, I've probably got my own spin on them, being self-taught and all. And yeah, experiment with one of them, all of them, possibly a combination, and just see what feels comfortable for you. And let's get going. So I'm just going to start by sketching some basic shapes here. When you are shading, obviously, depending on the texture of what you're shading and depending on the shape of it, whether it's curved, whether it's flat, whether it's 3D or 2D, will determine the method that you'll want to use. So this first method that we're going to use is called hatching, and here we're just going to take a look at the direction of what it is that we're shading. So you can see with the corner of the page, I'm just going to start doing some lines that run along the direction of the shadow, left to right in this case, and that's all really with hatching. You just continue to go over the same part. A common mistake is to press super hard to get that sort of dark shadowy look, but in reality, to get a smooth transition between the dark and the light, you're just going to want to press fairly light and just go over the same part over and over again and get the darkness that way. It's better for the paper, and it gets a more consistent and a more even blend between the darker parts and the lighter parts of your sketch. I'm just going to shade a little shadow here underneath to give it some depth. Right, so the second method is called crosshatching. And crosshatching is very similar to hatching as we did previously. However, you're going to want to go diagonal to the direction of the surface that you're shading. You can see I'm doing the side of this cube here, and I'm shading in a diagonal direction to the side of the cube, and then I'm going to go over it again in a direction parallel to that. So I feel like crosshatching and hatching are obviously very similar, but they evoke different textures, so depending on what it is that you're visualizing depends on what method would be best for you. There's something about crosshatching, in my opinion, that just makes it a little deeper. It's just a different style to hatching, and yeah, at the end of the day, it depends on the aesthetic that you're wanting for your project. You can see the edges are a little rough here with the crosshatching, so make sure that the technique you're using is appropriate for what you're visualizing in your mind's eye, because obviously this would be fine if you were doing, a storyboard sketch or something perhaps a little cartoonish, but for realism you're not going to want these uneven edges. So cross-hatching can be great, so can hatching, so can any other method we use here, but it really depends on is it appropriate or not for the project that you're working on. So this next method is called smudging. Hold on, I'm just going to draw these lines at the top and the bottom to give this shape some context. So pretty much here you're just going to want to do several shades of darkness. I'm starting with the outside being darker, and then I'm working my way in, and I'm going to leave the middle of it white initially. Don't be afraid to do that. Make some parts of your picture dark as possible, and then just leave the page blank on others to get that contrast. And now what I'm going to do is use an eraser, or you can use your finger if you have fingers. I'm going to use an eraser because I don't have fingers, but if you do, you can use your fingers. but if you don't, then you can't use them because you don't have them, so use something else like an eraser, which is what I'm doing because I don't have them. And we're just going to repeatedly go over this to smudge, to sort of get everything blending in together. And there's actually a method that I'm using while I do this, and it's what I said earlier about hatching. You're just going to want to press lightly, so you don't actually press the eraser hard into the page. You just press it very lightly, but go over the same parts over and over again, and it starts to get that blended look. It can be very time consuming, as can shading. Shading usually, if I'm doing a realistic sketch, shading takes up anywhere between 70 to 80% of the time I spend on a picture. But with practice, you'll get used to it, and you'll discover what method works better for you. And you also get used to approaching shading, coming into it knowing that it's going to take a certain amount of time to get the effect that you're after. So now that we've done that, I'm just going to say that this effect could have been used on the corner of the page earlier, where I was showing you hatching, to get a smoother transition between the dark part and the lighter part at the tip of the triangle. Likewise, that could have been used if this cube over here had a rounded edge, because you can see it's a very square edge and it goes from dark to light, and that's realistic given the shape. But as I said at the start of the video, with different shapes you want to be using different methods, and in this case, if the cube was rounded, you would be wanting to smudge, as we have, to get the blending between the darker cross-hatching and the lighter cross-hatching. So yeah, it just depends what it is that you're working on. Add a little shadow to our blended shape, because why not? Now finally, this last technique is Pointillism, and if you're not familiar with what Pointillism is, pointillist artwork, you might want to pause the video and go research it, or you can just Google it afterwards. But there's some pretty impressive pointillisms. I've worked on one myself, which I can show at the end of this video. Really, it's just dots on a page. You can see what I'm doing here. I feel like a woodpecker, actually, because it's just dots on the page repeatedly. And as with earlier, I said you don't press harder or lighter, but the more dots there are, the darker the page becomes, and the less, the lighter. So you're going to want to identify which parts of your picture require a more condensed dot population, and then make them scarcer and more spread out as the picture gets lighter. So that's really all there is to pointillism, but it can be very time consuming, and even if it doesn't take so long, that can feel like it's taking a long time due to just the nature and the repetition of doing dots over and over again. So one thing I've found with pointillism is you're going to want to make sure the dots are fairly random and just placed kind of all over the place, because if you're following a zigzag or a pattern or a line, it's going to look like that's the texture of the picture. And of course, if it is the texture of the picture, then that's perfectly fine. But if you're wanting it to just look, kind of realistic but done with dots, it can get some pretty incredible effects. And actually, I'm going to show you the pointillism here that I've done. I did this one here of Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption. You can also catch me gaming on my channel, by the way. Did some last year. So the way that I came about doing this was I had a friend who had done some really incredible, talented pointillism artwork, and it looks beautiful, so I did give it a shot, coming in with absolutely no prior knowledge or really any idea of what I was going to do. I did it with a pen, you can tell from this picture here, so doing it with a pencil obviously elicits a different result, but yeah, both are valid. But really, before I did this, I spent a couple of hours probably looking at pointillisms online, looking at other work people have done. So I didn't really learn anything about how to do them, but it's really inspiring to check them out online. So I recommend you do that if you're going to use this as a viable shading method. So to recap, I'll just show you here the complete page of what we've been doing. We've got hatching, cross-hatching, smudging, and pointillist shading. And these are 4 fundamental methods you can use, and you're not confined to any one of these or to even all 4 of them. I like to think of them as tools which you can experiment with and teach yourself your own shading method and discover what your style is. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to experiment with one or all of the techniques I showed you. Try putting your own spin on them, and yeah, of course, just make stuff up, be creative, and see what works best for you. In the next video, we are going to start a new picture from scratch, start all over again. And as we've done in this series, I generally start with the outline and work my way back to the details, but we're going to do the opposite. This is a sketching technique I personally don't use myself, but this is all about going out of our comfort zone, and I just want to show you different things to see what works best for you. So we're going to start with the details, work our way up to the outline, and yeah, you can see what feels most comfortable for you, and at the end of the day, just keep being creative and teaching yourself.